When this whole lockdown thing started, there were a whole lot of people that I saw talking about how this utterly destroys libertarian philosophy, how the libertarian worldview can't possibly handle a pandemic. I think it's starting to come to the point where it's pretty obvious that the opposite is true. The libertarian argument has never been stronger. Hell, the anarcho-capitalist argument has never been stronger, because all we need to say at this point is, if we have a government, there is an organization in society that has the power to do this again. Let's just consider this in the abstract. I'm not going to talk about any specifics, any specific countries, any specific numbers. I just want to talk about the principles involved. Let's consider a society where there is a pandemic starting out. Is it justified for the government to lock down society? Well, let's consider whether that would be justified for anyone else to do for a start. Let's consider a single case of it. I think that you shouldn't go outside, and so I therefore lock you in your home. I think that I have done a great harm to you. Now, maybe you would say that it's worthwhile, but let's be pretty clear here. I've done an enormous harm to you. That is something that I should be locked up for a long time for doing. If I'm going to forcibly lock you in your home, or heck, even forcibly prevent you from going to large gatherings. If I was to do any of that, that would be a significant harm, and therefore there would need to be some significant benefit in order to justify it. If you are someone who's deontological and you think that we must act on principle, then end of moral analysis. It is not justified for me to do that because it violates your rights. If you are more consequentialist and you think that there are some situations in which rights violations are justified if the cost of not violating those rights is high enough, or to put it another way, if the benefits of violating those rights are high enough, then it's at least in principle possible to justify me locking you in your home or preventing you from going to large gatherings or anything of the sort. Now, something that's been said quite a lot is that if it even saves one life, it's worth it. This implies that the value of a life is infinite. This is obviously wrong. You do not even value your own life infinitely. I think that you value your life more than you can expect other people to value your life. That seems reasonable to me. I value my life more than I expect you to value my life. However, even if we consider the amount that you value your life to be the canonical value of it, it's not infinite. You sometimes drive a car, or you walk on the streets where something bad could happen to you that could result in death. You're at risk of plenty of diseases, as well as motor accidents and other things like that. Or think of it another way, you sometimes eat unhealthy food that's going to reduce your expected lifespan. However, there are some costs to you that aren't worth it. Your life is not worth infinity. There are other things that you value. Okay, if life is not infinitely valuable, how can we possibly value it? My solution would be pretty simple. If you want to have a shower and risk slipping over and dying, that is your decision to make. You decide how valuable your life is. If you want to go drive on the road, then you can go out and you can make that decision. Now, you're also putting other people's lives at risk when you drive on the road, but there are also other people who have decided that driving on the road is a worthwhile risk for them. Or, to bring it back home, if you want to go outside and go to a large gathering in the middle of a pandemic, then it is your right to do so. Yes, you could argue that you're putting other people's lives at risk, but only the people who have also decided that it's worth the risk in order to go out. As a side benefit, those people are also benefiting all of the people who decided it was not worth the risk to go out, because the people who go out are contributing to herd immunity. This moral analysis is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. I don't think we need to look into any specific numbers, because the whole idea of locking down an entire society is utterly insane and could not be accepted by any freedom-loving person. However, it's become pretty clear to me that people don't love freedom. That might be a blow to libertarians, but I think if at this point you think that the average person has any significant value for freedom at all, you're simply living in a dreamland. That is not the case. What we've seen is that it takes a very small scare about a not particularly lethal virus in order for people to give up their entire lives for months on end. Even if you think it is justified, right, you do value safety that much, you still must at least concede the point that I am correct when I say that the value people place on freedom is very, very low. The value that people place on being able to live their lives in the way they choose is very, very low. This is not a high chance of death for any of you or any of the people you care about. However, that small reduction in safety is considered not worth the ability to live your life as you are planning to do. Now, I suppose it's also possible that you think you were doing nothing productive or useful or meaningful with your life to begin with. Never mind, I'm going to stop that line of reasoning. This video is depressing enough as it is. I think I want to expand on our hypothetical situation here a little bit. Let's say that there are two societies, one of which has locked down and has closed their borders and prevented people who have the disease from coming in without going through a 2-week quarantine. And let's say that there's another society that has done basically no lockdowns and has now gotten herd immunity because they've been through the pandemic. Right? I think that this contrast shows the absolute insanity of lockdown simply from a practical perspective, even if you don't value freedom. I mean, think about it. The country that has gone through the lockdowns and has not let anyone in, they do not have herd immunity. Right? That country is now going to have to, force everyone who ever comes into the country to go through a 2-week quarantine, utterly totaling their tourism business. Or is going to have to eventually open up and allow the pandemic to rip through anyway, and therefore they have completely wasted all of that time, destroyed those lives for no reason, crushed businesses for no reason, only to eventually go through the same thing that the country that did not lock down has already been through. The response that the lockdown apologists will give at this point is invariably, well, we could just lock down until there is a vaccine. This is ridiculous for 3 reasons. First, there's not any guarantee that we're ever going to get a vaccine. 2, the vaccine, if it's anything like the flu vaccine, is going to be maybe 30% effective. And 3, if you really think that you should avoid society until we have a vaccine, then you should avoid society until we have a vaccine, rather than forcing that on everyone else. The moral analysis stays the same. You're willing to shut down your life for months on end? You are free to. I think that history for libertarians is going to be quite friendly, provided you're one of the libertarians who stuck to their guns and you were saying from the beginning that no, you're not going to scare me into giving up all of my freedom, I am not supporting these lockdown efforts. If you're one of the libertarians who said, well, I mean, this virus is, it's about 10 times worse than the flu, and therefore we should do about 1,000,000 times as much to avoid it, then you are one of the libertarians that history is not going to be kind to. And, if I'm being quite honest, you are quite dubiously a libertarian. However, if you're one who stuck to their guns, I think this is going to be kind of like the Iraq War. Right? So the Iraq War happened, the majority of people supported it, and when it became obvious that it's a quagmire, all of the libertarians opposing it now have all of those old clips of them opposing it that make them look pretty damn good. And there's a whole lot of mental gymnastics with people kind of saying, oh, well, I never really supported it, or, well, at the time it was reasonable, but yeah, now it turns out that it's actually was a ridiculous idea. There'll be some mental gymnastics, some justification that people will play to make it okay that they supported it before, or to pretend that they didn't support it before. And the same thing will happen with the lockdowns. The lockdowns, at this point, you have the World Health Organization, you have the Great Barrington Declaration, you have basically a whole lot of people who are supposed to be the authorities on this that we're meant to be listening to, that the establishment that wants the lockdowns is not able to listen to, because they're all coming out against the lockdowns now, and it's only going to get more and more intense from there. The lockdowns are going to be quite obviously a ridiculous or totalitarian, horrifying idea that should never have been attempted. And libertarians who opposed it from the beginning are going to look pretty damn good. So I hope that you were one of the libertarians who opposed these things from the start. I probably should have done a video about it sooner, but I did talk about it on Twitter, so I've planted my flag there. If you are someone who chickened out and decided to say, well, in this case, maybe the government should, lock down all of society and take away all of our freedoms, well, then I hope you've learned your lesson and will stick to your guns on freedom next time. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of the libertarians who have actually stuck to their guns and defended freedom right from the start of this utter insanity. Some notable people would be Jeffrey Tucker and Tom Woods, who I think have done magnificent jobs attacking the ridiculous and insane lockdowns. I recommend the most recent Tom Woods lecture about the lockdowns, as well as Jeffrey Tucker's deep dive into the surprisingly early origins of the lockdown idea. Both of them you should definitely take a look at. Thanks everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.